Okay, yes, awesome. So here we are live at the Co-Creative Sex Summit Podcast Series, and I'm welcoming this beautiful human being called Nikka Karli. I'm very excited to present her. When I was getting all organized for the Co-Creative Sex Summit, I got in touch with Layla Martin to see if she would come, and she sent me this gorgeous, lovely lady my way. So I'm very excited to discover more who she is and what she's up to. And I'm very excited too about the theme that she's kind of delved into and mastered. So pussy magic, what is pussy magic and what does that entail? How can we access this thing called pussy magic? No. And then this whole thing around, she's this beautiful creative force of nature. And so she has this whole concept around rewilding and accessing creative flow. So we're going to look at it. I'll just give you like a little taste of one thing she wrote. And I was like, I have to ask her a question about this. Like an erotic excursion into the underworld of who you are so that you can once and for fucking all do what it takes every damn day to unleash and untame that raw primordial medicine of your soul that is howling to be set free. Yeah. So welcome to Nikka, Karli.
Thank you.
And just to put a context to all this whole podcast series, we're putting on a Co-Creative Sex Summit on 14th, 15th, and 16th of February in Vancouver, Canada, BC. And we're just inviting all these amazing human beings to this place to help people really become free and embodied with their sexuality, and really in the most powerful, aligned, serving way for our humanity, basically. And just really excited to hear what Nikka has to add to that conversation. We're getting all these conversations going pre-summit, and just amazing conversations have ensued. So yeah, I would love to just dive in there with Nikka. And if there's anything you'd like to say about yourself before we start, so we give more context, you're totally welcome to do that. So who are you, Nikka?
Thank you so much for having me. It's always such a pleasure to drop into the magic with other just humans who are ready to dive into the depths and just like co-create, right? Like from this really raw place. Who am I? I'm a muse. I am a writer. I am a soul medicine woman. I drop into movement and breath work and everything that is raw and primal and free, and just allows us to be in the remembrance of who we came here to be, what we came here to do, and like our time on this planet. What are we going to do with it, and getting back into that essence. Yeah. So that's really, I want to know, if you ever have a conversation with me, pretty much I just want to know what turns on your soul. Like, why are you here and what are you doing about it? And how do you desire to be in that with other humans? Yeah.
So what brought you to this, like, kind of very medicine woman, creative, poetic kind of sexual liberation goddess? She just gave me the title of the workshop she's doing. It's called The Goddess the Fuck Up. I'm like, this woman's brilliant. What brought you to all this work?
Yeah, it's been the thing that was always in me. Like even as a kid, I was super just like connected with sensuality and God and earth and like ether and just all of the things. And I was just like, yes, yes, yes. And there was pretty much everything from society and culture saying, no, 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 like this is, you don't get to be that free and that turned on and that in your body. And so I spent years just really working through that encoding of like, this is what you're supposed to be. This is how you are supposed to show up. This is how you're supposed to move and speak and create. And yeah, like just allowing myself to drop back into who I always knew that I was. And even from like when I was a kid, I was like, why are we here? Like, and what the fuck are we doing about it? Because that's all that matters. Like getting back down into that essence, like that is what it's all about. And so it's been just a journey of homecoming, really, and then inviting others into that same remembrance and liberation.
So it sounds like, yeah, there was this knowingness growing up, like that you had like tapped into something and this life force, this life energy, this creative energy.
Yeah.
And then different things came along and we're like, that's not good. No, stop that. And then it's like, you discover this moment like, well, no, this is really good. And I want to go there and I want other people to come with me kind of in that place.
Yeah, for sure. Like we all have everything about our childhood is pretty much to strip us of the truth of ourselves, to strip us of our voice, of our power, so that we can go into, right, that the base hierarchy of needs, right? Like right at the base, love, safety, belonging. Like if you are yourself, if you completely are free in who you are, like you will not be able to be safe. You won't belong with whoever it is, whatever people group you identify with. Like you won't have all of these things. And so everyone, there is a moment where you know that you can no longer continue along the path that someone else laid out for you. And yeah, and then the choice becomes what you're willing to do about it and who you're willing to be through that remembrance and through that howling that's like riding your body and stealing your breath in the night. Like who are you willing to be through that?
Yeah, amazing. So share us that moment that you had. Like, what was that moment that was like, no way, I'm not continuing like this anymore? What was that? What was that moment? That was it. Would you call it a dark night of the soul?
I mean, I know that we all like have like this idea of the dark night of the soul, and for me, it was more like there's just this thing, like I can hear it, I can feel it, and it wakes me up every single night. And there just became a point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. Like I couldn't not be who I was. And many like things that we might consider dark nights of soul, right? Like going through a divorce and like having moments where you give away your power to other humans, which is like really like not what I'm used to doing. And so when we have these points where we're like, what just happened? And for me, it was more a succession of like the howling in the night, and then seeing what became of that or what didn't become of that during the day. Like, oh, this is what reality is now reflecting back to me. Am I following soul or not? And you just have to draw that line in the sand of like, okay, I can't continue being anything other. Like,
could you give us like a little bit of taste of like what you were dealing with, like just like a little more concrete? Like what were the things that you felt like the way you're behaving, and then like we're like, no, that's not my howling soul there acting. What was that contrast? What would those two things look like?
When like anytime that I notice I am not living by body, I'm not listening to pussy and breath and God and art and soul, there is a constriction. Like I actually feel this visceral constriction as I move through my day. I will notice that my writing changes and I feel disconnected from my art. I feel disconnected from my expression. I'll notice that I'm already total introvert and empath. Like I love teaching and holding ritual space and being on stage, and all of that is like magic, and it's so orgasmic and turned on. And then also the other part, I'm like, and I just want to stay at home and read and write and be in storytelling, and that's pretty much it. But I noticed that there's a shifting where it's like a hiding space in my identity, right? So like identity, if we're really sovereign and standing in the truth of ourselves, we're willing to be seen and to speak our truth, like no matter what anyone else says. And I notice if I'm not in that I'll start to go into a bit of hiding with my identity, and I become even more introverted. And then I'll tend to swing into either like I have a lot of masculine and a lot of feminine energy, and I love like the primal and the sensual and riding all of the things. And I notice when I'm out of that alignment, when I'm not really dropped in, I shift into one or the other. So I either become like hyperactive and I'm just like go and I'm like, okay, I got to get everything done, but it's not from a really grounded and flow-based space. Or I go into hypoactivity, which is like, I don't want to write, I don't want to do anything, and it goes like into too much yin and nothing actually gets done. So I notice like I get out of alignment.
That's so cool. And so, yeah, tell us like what this pussy magic is.
Mm, yeah. And this pussy, right, is like this primordial space within our body of ancient lineage, right? Like there is this depth, and for men, cock, right? Like it is this ancient lineage and creativity, and there's so much sexual energy that is housed there. And what happens is a lot of people get that sexual energy stuck, and this comes from different encodings and trauma and intrinsic and extrinsic things and conditioning that we pick up from our life, from family, from ancestors, from society, etc. And this energy can get stuck, and then there, like, the magic of who we are also tends to get stuck, and then this turns into addictive patterning and behavior and hiding or trying to like prove and do all the things that are not who we truly are if we're actually dropped in. And so when we're able to be in this space of pussy magic or cock magic, and we're able to really drop in, we're able to actually kind of unstick that sexual energy, and then we're able to allow it to alchemize in our body, and we're able to actually create things with that energy. So we are able to shift the fabric of our lives, like the physical reality that we see. And as humans, our sight tends to be one of our primary senses if we have sight, and we tend to only go by what we can actually see in our physical reality. When we're able to drop into pussy magic and cock magic, we're able to use our sexual energy to shift not only what we see, but our perception of what we see. And so then we're able to begin to create and design and curate the relationships that we desire. We're able to use this magic and infuse it into our creativity, into our art, so that everything, it becomes more alive. Like a lot of people come to me like, I want, like, I need to have this full access. Like it feels like there are parts of myself that are stuck. And when we use our sexual energy, we're able to fully access our entire body, our energy body, our emotional body, physical, everything. And we're able to really tap into something that is like innate and immutable within ourselves, something that can't be shifted by what society tells us we have to be. And it gives us it gives us back, right, our access to our power. Like the power is already there within all of us. It's just that we have all of these layers and all these things. We've disowned the power, and we leak the power to past lovers and situations and all the things. And this is where we actually have that full access. Like, yeah.
So like, I'm really loving what you're saying. Like, it's like you're painting this picture of like our sexual energy being quite sensitive in a way to like whatever we experience, right? And it kind of gets shut down in different ways. And what you're talking about is like, as much as we can enliven our senses of sight or touch or whatever, we can sort of really drop into our body and feel that power that's actually there, and like let it, awaken and create and guide and give us our power and come from that juicy place. And I was just thinking while you were speaking that like people, for instance, feel like they're eternally stuck outside of relationships.
In what way?
Like let's say they stuck, like where they can't get into a relationship, they can't seem to find the right partner, for instance. Like it feels like something there. Is there something not flowing in that capacity to create one's relationship or the life they want, And so is there any thoughts around that you'd like to share about that?
Yeah. Anytime that we feel like we're stuck in any sort of pattern, there's generally some sort of emotional residue, energetic stuck points within our system. And this comes from past trauma, or maybe we're stuck in a stress cycle, whatever it might be. And so if it's something like, oh my God, I can't, meet, a good partner, or I keep attracting partners who are emotionally unavailable, whatever it is that we're seeing reflected back to us, it's a reflection. And so we get to look at, okay, how do I keep dating the same person over and over again? Like different face, different name, different body, but it's the same exact relationship, like just playing out. What's the lesson that it's here to show you? And looking at, okay, if we're continuously choosing something or avoiding something, like just not being in relationship at all, or feeling like we can't possibly meet someone, there's a pattern here that's being offered up to you. Your body is offering this up to you for you to witness it and to really drop into healing around it. And so there are, like, we have so many just unmet childhood needs that we then begin to play out in our adult relationships, specifically our most intimate lover type relationships, where we're trying to get specific needs met. And when they're not being met, because it requires us to do some deeper internal work around it first, right? Because we have to be able to meet those own needs for ourselves. But when we're continuously looking for those needs to be met in partnership, and then they can't be met in partnership, which it's pretty much impossible for them to be met in a really healthy way. Because when we're coming with these unmet childhood needs, what we want is our caregivers from our childhood to actually meet those needs. But then we're continuously calling in people and we're like, meet these needs. And then even if they come close, we're like, no, that's not what I wanted anyway. Like, you're not doing it right, because it's not the need that we actually desire to have met. So once we notice these patterns, we get to drop back into ourselves and look at, okay, so what is it that I'm trying to find? What is it that I'm trying to like really experience that I feel like I'm not experiencing in my relationships? And then what is the way that I can actually begin to heal that within myself? So if it is that I'm looking for belonging and I only feel like I can belong if my partner reflects that back to me, then how do I start to work on that belonging in myself? If I only feel turned on, or like I'm only able to feel pleasure when it's coming from a partner, okay, then what would it feel like? What would that experience be like if you actually begin to re-encode your system to be turned on and to experience pleasure regardless of whether or not a partner was there? And then you completely shift the types of partners that you call in, because you're filling yourself up first and you're attracting people who are also filled up, rather than attracting people who are trying to get their unmet childhood needs met through you, and you're trying to get your needs met through them. And then it's just a cluster. And so that space of like, I can't call them in, or I can't attract them, really getting down into what is it that you think a partner is going to meet for you? And then beginning to do that work for yourself, and then attracting people in from that work already having been done.
And how does the pussy magic work? Let's say you're in relationship with someone and there's all this, there's like, maybe things are not working out the way you want it to work out.
Yeah.
And how do you tap into that pussy magic to bring that magic into the relationship?
Yeah. So there are a lot of different ways. I mean, you can do a lot of sex magic, pussy magic, rewilding within your own body. And then if you're already in partnership and
just to stop you there 1 second,
like,
what would sex magic be and rewilding, just for people who don't know what that would mean? What is that exactly?
Yeah, so sex magic is really working with your sexual energy to begin to create what it is that you desire in your body, in your health, in your spirituality, in your life. Rewilding.
And how do you do that?
There are many different ways. You can do it with breath work. You can do it with movement practices. You can do it with different ways of actually working with your energy in your system, orbiting energy through your body. You can do it with, depending on which system.
So is it combining, like, sort of activating the sexual energy and then setting intentions? Is that the combo that creates that sex magic?
So if you're working, let's say that you're working with your chakras, if you're working with your energy system and chakra body, you can do it with different ways, but just your chakras, just different energy systems within your body, basically. And let's say like you begin to gather energy there and you begin to circulate and move with your breath. And then you begin to actually talk to your body and see what's here for you. And if there is an intention that you have to open into a deeper intimacy in your partnership, let's say, you can use it with these intentions. And then you begin to see like, okay, so what's here? What's the systemic trauma? What's the encoding? What are the beliefs that are keeping me in this space where I either don't feel that it's possible to have that for myself? Is there a sense of deservingness or worthiness? Is there a space where it doesn't feel safe? Safety is a huge thing where if we're wanting something in our relationship, but it actually doesn't feel safe in our body and our system to have that in partnership, because of many different, everyone's going to be different, but we have lots of different things. It actually perhaps wasn't safe in our past, or we saw things that weren't safe. So we begin to work with those. And so if we're working with, let's say, our solar plexus, and we're working with our power center, and we start to notice, okay, so we get into a sensate focus, which is like, what do you actually feel in your body? Like, what is actually happening when you begin to work with just the idea, like not even trying to make it happen, but just the idea of deepening your intimacy with your partner. And then you feel like, oh my God. And you feel like this kind of constriction, or you feel, it can be different for everyone, but you feel like maybe a sharp pain, or you feel like a ripple that starts to go through your solar plexus. And I'm just saying solar plexus, this can be in any space within your body. And so then you start to work with that sensation. You start to talk to that sensation. Okay, so what are you here to show me? And many different things that you can do, but let's just say, like, what are you here to show me? And then you listen, and you actually drop into communion with your body and what your body is offering you. And then you can do breath work and begin to integrate what's happening in your body, rather than, so what a lot of people do is like, here's my thing that I want. And so then I'll write some, affirmations on a mirror, and, like, say it 50 times a day, and we're wondering why it doesn't actually work, or why nothing is shifting. If there is something that's happening in your body, if there's an energetic stuck point or emotional residue, there's a fear body, like our body actually goes into a trauma response when we don't feel safe. So if we're like, I want this deeper intimacy, but our body goes into a flight response within our body because we don't feel safe to have that deeper intimacy. So then we begin to run away from our partner. We're like, but we set this intention. But then no, we start to mess up our relationship. We try to get our partner to break up with us. We break up with our partner. We just start like random fights, and we just leave the house, like whatever it is. And we're like, why am I doing this? And people will say, oh, like it's self-sabotage. No, you're actually in a trauma response. Like you're in a trauma response, and your body is actually afraid of this thing that you're trying to call in. And so when we use sex magic, we actually look at, okay, what is my body offering me about this thing that I'm trying to create in my life, rather than just trying to force my way into it and thinking about it. We get out of our head and we get down into our body, and we begin to work with our different energy systems, whatever way that feels good for you. And you begin to really tap into, okay, so what's happening when I even think about this, right? What happens in my body as a response to me trying to move forward? And so there is a space to work with our emotions, to work with the actual sensation, to talk with our body. And then we begin to integrate it with sex magic, with, you can use different sub-personalities, sub-identities, all sorts of things, but we use whatever tool presents itself, and, depending on like the depth of work that you've been doing. And if you're working with someone, but you begin to integrate it back into your body, rather than trying to force the fear away, or trying to just ignore it, which is what a lot of people do, and just try to get to the thing. You actually work with the fear that your body is presenting to you, and you begin to cultivate a space within you that you're able to integrate it. And then you move forward by regulating your nervous system and using, like, you can use elements, you can use like all sorts of things, but really using your breath. You can use your sound, movement. These are like three huge, like, breath, sound, and movement key pieces in working with whatever is happening and coming up in your body. And then I always need to add in some sort of creativity, like some sort of creative expression around what your body is offering you, rather than just kind of like, oh, this is what my body offered me, and then just sitting with it, like, get it up and get it out.
Beautiful. And yeah, so if we're really connecting to that place in our body, having that conversation with our body, does that mean that we can do a lot of our healing on our own, or do you feel like it's really something that should be held by someone else, like supported by someone else to do this process?
Yeah, it depends on where you are. It depends on the level of what it is that you're working with. If there is some really deep, if you're in acute trauma, most definitely work with someone else, trauma specialist, preferably a body-based trauma specialist who also has a background in psychotherapy, like bonus, best of all worlds. If you are working with systemic trauma that you have already, like you worked with it when it was acute, you've done some deep work around it, there is likely a space where you can hold this yourself, as long as you have the tools. So I always recommend, like, if there's something that's deep and you're like, I can't figure this out on my own, then work with someone. It doesn't mean you have to work with someone forever and ever, amen. It just means like you work with someone to, you work with someone to help you see what you can't see or what you haven't been able to see on your own. And if you notice that you are in a place where you're unable to process and integrate on your own, absolutely working with someone else, because otherwise what happens is we begin to process out our stuff on the people in our life, meaning we begin to take it out on most often the people who matter most to us, sometimes random strangers. So if you find that you're unable to work with your stuff, then definitely working with a healer, with a coach. And also, if you just know that you want to go deeper and you really want it, like you want to go really deep into the essence and the body and the soul and really work with stuff, there is generally that safety layer that your body's like, oh my God, but what if we go so deep we can't come back out of it? And that means you'll limit yourself with how deep you go if you don't have someone who's holding space for you.
Yeah.
So I always say, like, always have someone like in your Rolodex, going super old school, but in your Rolodex, like, of someone who, like, if you know you're working with someone, have someone that you can reach out to, and also learn how to do this stuff like on the regular on your own.
That's a great thing. Like sometimes we think we have to only do it with support, or sometimes we just want to do everything on our own, but like this nice mixture of both, where you're empowered to also take care of that, because it's a constant work. It's a constant thing of being in touch with yourself. It's a constant becoming aware of, and of processing stuff. So I really appreciate that piece. But what does it look like when people work with you? Like what do you hold containers like this for people?
Yeah, it depends on the container that we're working in. I like, if you know me, I love ritual space, and it is one of just like, God, holding ritual space is like one of my things, and really dropping into breath work and connecting.
So just before you go a little bit further,
energy,
so like when you say ritual space, again, like some people might get it, but what does that mean exactly for you?
It depends on the situation. So I'm very intuitively led and very dropped into the moment. I don't have something where it has to be this way for each client.
Right.
I love anything that, like, if we're working with breath, same thing. Breath, movement, sound is generally going to be in there in some way, shape, or form, and then also creative expression.
But is this ritual? Elements. Is this the ritual piece? Okay, perfect.
Yep. Yeah.
Why do you call it ritual though? Is it because for me, when I think ritual, there's a kind of like a spiritual context, and there might be a bunch of people, but is this like just one-on-one kind of thing?
It can be either way. So ritual really, like, ritual, you can make anything ritual. You can make a conversation over the internet ritual. So ritual is seriously bringing in the sacred into the mundane. And so you can work with elements, and you can work with, going out. Like if I do in-person stuff, then we are most definitely getting out into nature, and we're bringing all of that in. But ritual space is whatever you make it. So if you have the intention of allowing whatever you're doing to be sacred, it becomes ritual. If you are doing it without intention, without consciousness, without awareness, without presence, that's when it's just like you're probably just going through the motions, or you're trying to get to something, or trying to achieve something, or you're trying to get rid of something that you don't like in your body or your relationships or whatever it is. So ritual is really just bringing in the sacred and holding yourself in the deepest consciousness and presence.
Got it. Okay, good. I just needed that to be clarified. Sometimes ritual can mean, there's like ritual in church, there's ritual, like a kind of a sect could be like a ritual, you know, but it's like and I totally like vibe, like sort of resonate with your idea, like, yeah, just bringing in that container of sacredness and allowing, you know, to be supported by this bigger thing. So that's what I'm getting. If I got it properly this time.
Yeah.
Awesome. So then there's this, so you work with ritual, with bringing the sacred in, movement, breath, and so it could be one-on-one, it could be in groups. And what kind of things do you see happen for the people that are working with you?
I get to actually remember, like just remember who the fuck they are, why they're here, what they came here to do. Their power changes, like their access of their power, the way that they speak and ask for their desires and hold their own sovereignty within their body. Like they take this sovereignty and ownership back within their body, and they reclaim their power from anywhere like that they've been leaking it. Their art completely changes. I work mainly with creators, messengers, people who are here to completely shift the fabric of the universe, and their access to that genius is like it completely drops in. So we get out of their head into their body, and one of the biggest things is that they become more turned on. Like they really have this deeper access to the self-trust and this like the space where they're able to play in the sacred with their everyday life, and that turn on then goes out into the way that they make love. So they are like just so changed in the way that they're able to be met intimacy wise, sexually, just with pleasure. Their pleasure completely enhances, and that there's this quality of liberation in their body. So it's not just like something that they talk about or something that they know that they want, but there is this quality of liberation and freedom within who they are and who they came here to be. So like the people I work with and myself 100% like cannot die with our music still inside of us. And there is like this complete longing for the primal and this raw like expression of everything that we are, like, and it like just completely wringing out our souls. And that's the work that we do together.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm not sure if you like want to play with me a little bit.
Let's do it.
But I was wondering if you could like sort of give us that kind of like tap into that force of creation, and I'll just sort of see what comes out of like that creative force. Would you be willing to help do that with us?
Sure. And like in what way? Like
I'm just thinking like you seem to have like a spoken word kind of like power, a sort of secret power there. Maybe it's not so secret, but just sort of like tapping in and just like, I don't know, just demonstrate what that power is when you really connect and be that demonstration. Like, you know, how we talked about getting out of our head. So how could we get that like experience of just what you're talking about? And I'm putting you on the spot, so I totally know that. So if it's like you're not feeling it, like totally
no, we'll see what comes through.
Okay.
There's a fear that lives in us that's always here, it's always present, and the more that we allow that fear to control who we are and what we do and what we say and the way that we move and the way that we make love, our life becomes smaller. And the smaller that our life becomes, the smaller we believe that we are. And when we're in that belief, everything begins to shift from what it could be into what it has been, what it's been from ancestors and lineage, what it's been from oppressors, what it has been from society, and everything that we are becomes what we would have been had we continued to walk the path of someone else's mission and someone else's belief and someone else's desire for what the world should be. But when we say yes, we step into the truth and the remembrance remembrance of who we are, and we access the muck, we access the darkness, we drop into the underworld of our soul, rather than living on the surface and following paths of what others told us to be and what others told us to do and what others told us was possible for who we are. We say yes, and when we say yes, we keep saying yes, and the more that we say yes, the more that our body becomes a yes, and so that it's not one thing. We don't have to take one path or what someone else told us we had to be or do or say or become, but our body becomes a tuning fork. Pussy becomes a tuning fork to the magic and the breath and the remembrance of who we always were. We just forgot. And this is the yes. This is the yes and. The yes and is when we say yes to the things that are easy and the things that are flow, and we also say yes to the things that are rising up from soul and from spine and from pelvis and from the depths and the primordial remembrance. And we continue to say yes, and what else might be here? What else might be true? What else might be coming through body and breath and soul and art and God and earth and fire and all of the things. Yeah.
Thank you. That's awesome. You summed it all up there. That's pretty cool. And I love it how, like, really what you're after, like, there's this whole sexual component, but there's really that commitment to get people connected to their creative force and their real, like, contribution, so that they can go out there and create something good in the world, and that's like has this impact that comes from this authentic, genuine place. And it really speaks to me when you say that when you're hiding, it's hard to fully allow that beauty, that the people that really are resonant with you to come into your life. You're not in your fullest power. So, like, to get out of that hiding space and to be visible and to accept yourself and to love yourself and just be open, it creates this whole other possibility in life. I'm just really feeling that with you.
Yeah, it really does. We open, like,
yeah. And then, like you say, like, I remember having this conversation with someone about how she was talking about men in this context, but I think it's also valid for women too, that, you know, a man that's not fully in his mission and out doing the work he wants to be doing and feeling empowered in his work, it's really hard for him to be connected fully to his sexuality or to his partner or creating something of that nature. And so, or it's not in alignment. And so being completely in your mission, feeling like, wow, like empowered with what you actually can do in life, and feeling like you're that passion of having that passion of what we're doing. It really, right, it ignites that sexual piece as well, in terms of like feeling that life, you know, that feeling that greatness that's possible. But when you're feeling you're not fully on point with where you're going, everything's kind of out of sync, because you can be a little depressed, you can be a little bit down on yourself, you're kind of beside yourself. And that affects everything, including your sex life, including your relationships, including just what you're out to have, that who you're out to be in the world, basically.
Definitely.
Yeah. So is rewilding in the same kind of vein as this? Is it sort of a term to explain this whole process, or is it something completely different?
Yes, and like it's a space where we drop into exactly who we are and who we came here to be. And we get to explore like how we are in our own skin, the way that we dress, the way that we create, the way that we make love. How true is it? Like, how authentic is it to our own soul and our essence and the medicine and the magic that rides within our body? Or where are the spaces where you're still false, where you're still wearing a mask, where you're still using armor to stay protected from whatever it is that you know, like you've been coded around that would happen if you were completely free? So it becomes a way of being, like everything, the things that you do shift into who you are, like, and they come from, so your actions come from that beingness, and you go back into this very primal way of existing in your own skin. And you're tapped back into the cycles of nature and the rhythm of the world around you. Like you're actually able to feel, and things become more, there's a resensitization and attunement to the world and who you are in the world. And rather than living from your fear body and living from your trauma body, you begin to use everything. So when you have a fear or you notice that you're in a trigger, you use that, and it becomes fuel for you becoming even more and more and more of who you always were. So it's a homecoming. It is a way of tapping into full, deep presence within this moment. So you're not living from what happened in the past. You're not making decisions from the past. You're not making love because of who you were in the past. You're also not living in avoidance or this, oh my God, please, desperation of the future. You're actually here. You're fully in whatever you're in that breath. And life becomes this breath by breath expression and turn on and bliss, because you're able to actually be with what is, rather than, and there's an acceptance, and it doesn't mean there's like a complacency, but there's an acceptance, and you're able to use all of it and to alchemize it with body, with breath, with everything that you are. And your relationships change, like completely change. Your relationship with your partner, with family, loved ones, your relationship with art, God, whatever God, creator, great mystery, universe might be for you, like everything begins to shift because you're tapped back in to who you were before anyone told you you had to be anything else.
Well, what I'm noticing with you that I'm really moved by is there's this quality in you, like you're really about authenticity and really tapping into that place of like real expression and not hiding, and just sometimes, I've seen in the future in certain situations where someone, let's say, was really attached to the idea of authenticity, but they'll be the first people to find everywhere else where it's not authentic. But what I'm sensing from you is this real kindness, because like you've almost, like I feel like you found that place inside of you of authenticity. And it's like, yeah, and there's like, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not, sometimes we hide, sometimes we don't, but it's like this constant place of transformation. And so I feel like I really feel the container you're going to hold for people in terms of like allowing them to experience that, because it's like there has to be this love container for people to like let go, right?
There does, yeah. Like I find a lot of people who are like, yeah, I want to do like this deep work of who I am, but they only want the good, and they only want, or whatever they have encoded around being good, or what they think of as like fun and easy, and like, yeah. And in order for us, that authenticity, it like, yeah, sometimes it sucks. Sometimes you're going to rage. Sometimes you're going to like howl and cry, and you can't seem to like figure out and remember like your own name. And like, it's all of it. It's messy. Life is messy. Remembrance is messy. Liberation is messy. And if you're craving that truth within yourself, then there has to be a capacity to walk with everything. Like not only the things that you're like, oh, this is so easy, and this means I'm like so #woke and I'm so this, like that, like, no, it's like, who are you when no one's looking? And who are you? What is coming up from within you that you're then like, that's how you're expressing and moving through the world, rather than getting whatever we think of as authenticity, getting it from someone else. Like, because that's when we're being false to ourselves. And it's not even about like, oh, someone else thinks that you're false. No, it's like your body knows when we're being, like, our body knows and feels. And that's when we start to have health issues. That's when we start to have like energy that just gets stuck, and we can't ground, or we can't access our highest self, or we believe we can't, like. And so when we're in it, like authenticity, it's really just like, if you're actually being are you being all of you, not just the stuff that's prettier or what you think you have to be because of whoever it is that you identify as being.
And that's a huge piece. It's a huge, huge piece for a lot of people. And even holding space for other people, and that that messiness that you talk about, like just being able to be all right with that.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
always remind myself, like, everyone around me is also me, and I'm just like, okay, like, that's why, like, whatever they're experiencing, I'm experiencing somewhere in my life. And just always remember that oneness. And then it like kind of helps me just like reground. Like sometimes instead of feeling protective or defensive about how some people are behaving with me, and it sort of just creates a new context, of
Yeah.
that's what, and I really associate. I really like what you're saying about that.
Yeah. Because we all go through our stuff, right? Like everyone's going through something, and we get to, and it doesn't even, like, I find that some people like, oh, I have to see my exact self in them, or like that I'm experiencing the exact thing that they're in order to have empathy, or in order to just simply like, this is where you're coming from today, like that. Okay. It doesn't have to be the same. Like no one, like, right. Like that, their experience is theirs is theirs.
Yeah.
But also just knowing, right? Like, yeah, whatever, if I'm triggered, right? Like no one can trigger you. Like no one's triggering any of us. If we have a trigger, it's our stuff. Like I am being triggered, right? You are being triggered.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm triggering you, you're triggering, none of it. But if I'm in something, I get like, whoa, okay. It doesn't mean that they're doing the same thing, or like, oh crap, but we get to see ourselves in other humans, right? Like we get to find that reflection, like, oh, hey, what's happening in here, right?
Right.
And then we get to process and integrate and own it. Like we get to own our own stuff. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's like
and
that
hard and scary and amazing.
Yeah. It's just the way you describe it. It's like the most empowering way to go about it, because you're really always seeing whatever's happening is like a reflection of what you're working on, as opposed to like needing to fix everyone else outside of you,
Yeah.
It's
Like
very
that's their stuff.
empowering to sort of, very powerful.
Yeah. Like, and if they didn't invite you in, right? Like then that's their stuff, right? And we get to work on our own stuff.
So I see that our time's coming towards the end now, but is there something you'd like to share, the last piece that's really important to you right now, that you're super passionate about right now?
Super passionate about like these, like the final, like the dredges of like our old encoding. Like there's always this last like layer, and every time we up level, there's going to be another layer. So this is not like, oh, you're going to fix it and everything. Like you're going to access everything in this one moment. But it's like at this evolution of soul, that in this moment, what are those last dredges of old encoding that are holding us back from stepping fully into like the deepest, rawest expression, and working in those last tiny little nooks and crannies that are probably the most uncomfortable, probably hold the most fear and systemic trauma and encoding for us, and like, can we work with those with grace? Like, can we be in those last, it's like the stuff that's in their final death throes, like it's like, and you're going to get into all of your stuff, all of it's going to come up. Can you even be in that with grace? Like, can we walk even there, even in like the scariest aspects of looking at ourselves? Can we be there with breath, and can we be there with grace now? So I'm super like, ooh, about
and
right
like
now.
Breath, whenever I hear breath, I'm sort of even imagining like space every time, instead of being like, okay, this is really scary, but like the breath just always brings back that space and allowing that movement to like allow anything that's stuck to just move.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
It's that cleansing, right? And it drops us in where we actually get to shift how we're showing up in our reality in that moment. Like if you come back into your breath, you actually get to shift how you're showing up, regardless of whatever is happening around you. You get to come into a space where you remember that you have conscious choice over your part.
So just one last question I have that just came up when you were speaking. When you talk about the systematic type things that we're like we've received and inherited, like, can you give me like a sort of name one that you sort of feel like is really on the brink of like, maybe having a transformation?
For me, or like as a collective?
as a collective? I was thinking more.
It feels like there's a really deep space where we're starting to look at our own internalized racism and bias, and how, like, and learning how to actually sit with the pain and discomfort around everyone's part in the way that the world is currently turning, like, in what is happening, and the hot mess that we have on so many layers and levels, and also the love that is still, like, it's still there. It's like, you might have forgotten, but I'm still here. And really looking at this internalized and systemic racism that has completely affected how we do everything, like how we have sex, how we elect officials, how we get into relationships, how we share or don't share our art, and how it's affecting our health and our spirituality and everything. That's where I feel like we're really beginning to, as a collective, some are like in full on fight and like really adamant about not stepping into it, and there are others who are like, okay, I can at least recognize that this is a thing, even if they're not ready to step in. And then there are those of us who are like 100% all in it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Super fascinating, super alive, and full of just like that movement and creative vibrancy. So thank you for sharing from your whole body. Like, we just felt that whole body vibing throughout the whole time. So
it's so welcome.
So awesome to receive that. Would you love to, like, I'd love you to give an opportunity to anyone listening to us how they could work with you.
Yeah. So if you are ready to go into the depths and to really drop into body and breath and soul and self-leadership, and taking radical responsibility for who you are, and looking at why you haven't stepped into this next evolution of who you're here to be, then you can join me. I have an upcoming workshop. It's called, that you mentioned, it's called Goddess the Fuck Up. And it is all about going 100% in and bringing out your soul. Like, we drop into Underworld and all of the things, archetypal expression, everything. And you can check it out at goddessthefuckup.com.
Awesome. So it's actually, you actually have a website just for that, the Goddess Fucked Up. The Fucked
No,
Up.
it's on my website. I'm obsessed with URLs and the energy of URLs. So yeah, it's still on my main, like, I have a main website home. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So just say it one more time, or maybe you can write it in the chat after, where people could find it.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
So it's goddessthefuckup.com.
Awesome.
Yeah. And if you have questions, I'm at Nikka Karli on Instagram and all the things.
Yeah. And I'd also just like to make a final invite to the CoCreativeSex Summit. It's the 14th, 15th, 16th of February. It's Valentine's weekend, and just amazing, beautiful souls. Like these conversations, we're going to be going into these deep places to experience, our full aliveness. And my commitment's really this very similar to Nikka's, in that I really want people to experience their wholeness, their whole creative body, their whole creative being, and that involves having your creative energy completely involved in what we're up to. So thanks for really explaining that whole piece for us, Nikka. And and if you're interested in coming to our summit, whether you're in Vancouver or from another part of the world, you're welcome to check. I put in the little description, the CoCreativeSexSummit.com, and we have an early bird, which is actually for the holiday season, a special gift for you guys. So you can follow that link. And Nikka's going to put her information as well, so you can find her work, her brilliant and passionate and alive work. So
thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for bringing the sacred into this conversation.
Anytime.
I really appreciate that.
Thank you, love. An honor.
Okay, love you lots, and we'll talk soon. Bye, everyone.